What's up, you guys? FSC Speed Shop. We're over here in Appleton, Wisconsin at the Bergstrom's complex of dealerships right here. Right behind me we got Alfa Romero, Maserati, Volvo, and Porsches down over there. Reason we're here is we're gonna go ahead and check out an Alfa Romero. Now there's a little bit of history with that car with me. I'll go ahead and tell it to you real fast. When I was a kid, a friend's father brought home an old Alfa Romero. I was probably like 13, 14 years old. Now, I never heard of that car before at that time of my life. When my friend's father brought that car in, it was in rough shape. So it came in on a tow truck. And I remember looking up underneath the back of it. One thing I noticed on that car was it had brakes that were inboard of the rear half axles. By the way, this was probably the first rear-wheel drive car I ever seen. It didn't have a solid rear axle that had independent rear suspension and CV axles or half shafts coming from the diff in the center, similar to what your Ferraris and your even modern-day Dodge Challengers and Chargers are like. That was the first time I've ever seen anything like that, but it had inboard brakes. Now, if you think about it, it was a high-performance car of sorts in its day, and you couldn't fit big brake rotors in a little 14 or 15-inch rims like we do today. Nowadays, even my Mercedes is running 19-inch rims. So that's how they did it back then. But that was the first time I knew of Alfa Romero. Alfa Romero quit selling cars in the States for quite a many years. And to be honest, I must have been living under a rock. But when I was down in Detroit last year filming the Ace Spade Rally meet and greet, a guy rolled up to the hotel in an Alfa Romero Stilvia, which is the SUV. I might be saying that wrong, but that's the SUV Alfa Romero. Apparently, they've been back in the States since 2016, and I never knew about it. Well, there's a car that caught my eye, and there's one right in here. We're gonna go check it out, because we're setting goals. Okay guys, this is the car we came here to see. Right here is the 2019 Alfa Romero Giulia Quadrafoglio. Now it's kind of funny how we found this car. When Matthew and I were filming at the Chicago Auto Show, Alfa Romero had a booth down there. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We were only down there for one day. We just simply ran out of time. But after we were looking at the Cadillacs, right next to it was the Alfa Romero booth, and my son wanted to mess around in the simulators that they had set up down there. Now that simulator was set up with an actual car. When you sat in that car, you had control of the steering wheel, the brake pedal, and the gas. Obviously, you weren't driving the car, there was a screen projected in front of you. And that car was an Alfa Romero Giulia. First time I've ever seen one. At first, it was just letting my son mess around with the simulator. But as I looked at the car more, I was thinking, man, that's a nice looking car. I wouldn't mind having something like this. And it was the blue that I really like. It had this real aggressive stance the way it sat there. And I love the rims, the way it looked, the way they tucked it into wheel wells and all that. It had this look to it that I just had to know more about. In the end, we ran out of time. We messed around with the simulator and we left. At that point, your curiosity gets the best of you. So I started looking around, where's there a local Alfa Romero dealer? How far do I gotta drive to find one? Well, lo and behold, in the same dealership complex I bought my Mercedes is the Alfa Romero here at Bergstrom's. And they had the Giulia sitting right here next to me, waiting just for me to come look at it. So we did. Went home, got my camera, and here we are. So I'm getting ready to introduce to you my new mistress, Giulia. Now I know what you're thinking, Steve, don't you already own a four-door luxury car? Why would you want another one? Well, as nice as that little C-Class is that I bought Jen, this is a whole nother animal. Well, it's not really fair to compare the C300 Mercedes to this because in fact, they're not even close to the same. This car right here is Italian, built in Italy, where my Mercedes is built somewhere completely different in Germany with completely different mindset in mind when they were building that car. This car has more in common with Ferrari than anything else. Let me show you. Now what sets this car apart from all the others is simply what's under the hood. Underneath here is an all aluminum 90-degree 2.9 liter V6 twin turbo. She makes 505 horsepower and 443 foot-pounds of torque. This is out of a 2.9 liter V6, guys. Now granted, she's twin turbo, there's one turbo on each side, and it's a beast. Now behind that, to get the power from the engine to the rear wheels, is an 8-speed automatic transmission, which also has the F1 style paddle shifters on each side of your steering wheel. From what I'm reading, not available in the United States, is or was a 6-speed standard shift. But here in the United States, we're not getting that, guys. And to be honest, if you have an F1 style transmission, I don't know if you'd really want a standard anyway. Or maybe I'm just saying that to make myself feel better. But to be honest, I would not get the stick shift. I would go with the 8-speed F1 style shifted automatic. Now, according to Alfa Romero, her 0 to 60 time is a blistering 3.8 seconds. Now, her estimated 0 to 100 mile an hour time is 12.1 seconds. But there's a little funny thing with that, I'll tell you in a minute. Now, for you European racing buffs out there, this car did the Nürburgring. Her fastest time was 7 minutes, 32 seconds, which apparently set some sort of record out there for a 4-door sedan. Now, here in the United States, and specifically in New Jersey, where I grew up, back when there used to be an Englishtown dragway out there, Old Bridge Township Raceway Park, I know quarter-mile times. Now, here's where I question Alfa Romero's 12.1 second 0 to 100 estimate. She does the quarter mile in 12.1 seconds at 119 mile an hour. So the estimated 0 to 100 at 12.1, that's actually slow. The car's much faster than that. According to the quarter mile time, 0 to 119 in 12.1. So that's 20 mile an hour faster in 12.1 seconds. So even right there, a 12.1 second 4-door stock car, that's fast. Now, underneath this carbon fiber hood is an absolute monster of an engine. This car is a Quadrafoglio, meaning it has the race-inspired technology behind it. This basically is a factory 4-door drift missile race car, you name it. It has the carbon fiber hood, carbon fiber roof, and a carbon fiber drive shaft. There's a little bit of a debate on the internet regarding this engine. I'm gonna go ahead and try my best to clarify that for you guys. We're gonna speak about this engine right here specifically. This is that 90-degree 2.9 liter twin turbo V6 we spoke of a minute ago. Now, this engine in this car has a compression ratio of 9.3 to 1. That's before anything is turbocharged, obviously. Now, the red line is at 6,500 RPM. However, Alfa Romero claims that the engine's max RPM is 7,400. Now, as far as I'm concerned, what that means is at 6,500, you're starting to lose power. You need to start upshifting, but you're basically safe to not grenade your engine until 7,400. After that, you break it, you buy it. Now, this is an overhead cam engine and it's chain driven, no belts. Now, if you're more familiar with domestic models as I am, you're gonna find it a little different with this car. The timing chains on this engine are actually in the back of the engine between the flywheel and the block. Now, here's where I'm gonna squash some of the internet debates on this engine. The bore and stroke on this, the bore is 3.40 inches and the stroke is 3.23 inches. Now, for all you old school hot rodders out there, this is 2.9 liter twin turbo V6 that comes out to 176.4 cubic inches. The twin turbos on this car are single scroll through a water charged air manifold. Basically, it doesn't have a air-to-air in the front or an aftercooler like you're thinking. It looks like a giant radiator. This one cools the charged air through a water manifold. Now, here's where I'm going to get into details for people who start to misunderstand the origins of this engine and commonalities that people think that it has with the Ferrari engines. I've seen it said where basically this engine is a engine that was basically straight out of the Ferrari California minus 2 cylinders. Not exactly. Here's the exact details for you engine buffs out there. This engine right here, the Alfa Romero 2.9 liter V6, has a bore of 3.4 inches and a stroke of 3.23 inches, meaning the cylinder is 3.4 inches across and the stroke, the distance the piston travels from top dead center to bottom dead center, is 3.23 inches. The Ferrari California V8 has a larger bore of 3.70. However, the stroke, which is again the distance the piston travels up and down, is 3.08. So it's a little more than 3 inches of stroke. So it has more cylinders, more bore, but much less stroke. Also, in the compression ratio, before the turbos start pressurizing this engine, you're sitting at 9.3 to 1 compression ratio. The Ferrari California V8 runs at a much higher compression ratio at 12.2 to 1 compression. So I said, look at these numbers, I question this. How is it that this engine makes so much power with a sitting compression ratio of only 9.3 to 1? To me, the answer must be in the turbochargers. And to be honest, I did not find information as far as how big those turbos are. But those are some really impressive numbers to get that kind of horsepower out of a 2.9 liter V6. Another thing that'll help this engine out from an engine builder standpoint, this engine is more of a square engine, meaning the bore and the stroke are very similar. In other words, you're just under 1.5 inches of bore and you're just under 1.5 inches of stroke, meaning it's basically square. I'm defining square as where the bore and the stroke are basically the same. Now, if you look at the Ferrari, it's a little off balance on that case. It's got a very big bore, almost 4 inches, with only a 3-inch stroke. Granted, a V8 naturally is better balanced than a V6. Now, if you get your V6 a lot squarer, which is what this is, you have a better running engine, smoother, and better longevity. So enough about that, let's go ahead and get into the fun stuff. Now I could open up the hood and show you that this is in fact a carbon fiber hood. It's not painted underneath. You can actually see the carbon fiber weave. And it looks very nice. Now the roof is carbon fiber as well. Now I'm not going to tear this one apart to prove it to you, but if you look on our website, you'll see it also optional is an exposed carbon fiber roof. So if you want to show off you've got a carbon fiber roof, you have that option. Now hidden in the front is something you don't see. It's there, but you don't see it. Now when you're driving a car like this, you have to be careful when you're coming in and out of weird terrain, you know, where you're coming up off a road, you got a steep driveway or some uneven ground. It is pretty low to the ground, but the car does get lower. This carbon fiber splitter at high speed like 63 will drop lower. Now it might not need it at 63 mile an hour, but with the car's top speed of 191 mile an hour, you probably want to keep as much downforce on the front of the car as you can, so the splitter will lower down some. Good thing with that is it retracts back to sitting position where it sits now. That way you can get up a driveway without ripping it off the car. I mean, that's kind of important, right? You want to have these functions because this is a track-focused car, but you still have to drive it on a street. And believe me, I lowered a car. It's not the easiest thing in the world to get over certain humps or bumps or what have you. No one wants to replace this, so it comes back up when you don't need it. Ain't that something? Active aero in a 4-door car. I like that. Now getting into this car is a lot different than the car that I already have. A lot of people complain about it, but as you can see, a big guy like me, there's no real issue getting in and out of this car. The B-pillar is a little bit more forward than the average car. I don't know why, but to be honest, I think it has to do with getting a full-size guy like myself in and out of the back seat. But I can get in and out without a problem. Just to show, I'll do it twice. Again, sometimes I think the internet complains just for the sake of complaining. Now once you sit down in the car, you got the bolsters in your seats that are right next to your back. And let me tell you, this car absolutely will hug you. You know you're sitting in a fast car just when you sit in these seats. Now the seats themselves are a very smooth and nice feeling material. The steering wheel is a very sporty wheel to hold. It also has carbon fiber accents, and it has a very distinctive look to it, especially when you start the car. It's literally a thumb button right here on the wheel. Once you sit in the car, you feel like you belong. Get your seat adjusted right, and everything is exactly where you would figure it to be. Everything's right at your fingertips. You don't have to go crazy bending or twisting yourself to get at certain functions of the car. Everything's right there where you need it. Reach for the headlight switch, reach for the shifter, the HVAC, a lot of buttons on your steering wheel as far as your cruise control and so on. That's all right there where you could, I mean, everything's right there. Right down to paddle shifters, your turn signal stalk, your wipers, everything's right there. Literally, you don't even have to look at it. Now, I've never driven this car. Believe me, I'd love to. But fact of the matter is, from driving enough miles, I know once you get the muscle memory to where everything is, you literally don't have to even think. You don't have to wonder, where's this switch, where's that switch? It's all right here at your fingertips. Real easy to get to. Another thing that sets the Alfa Romero Quadrafoglio apart from all the other cars is it has different driving modes. What I mean by driving modes is this. If you look back at other videos with my car, my Mercedes, you have just eco mode and sport mode. Well, that's entry-level stuff. This car is a whole nother set above that. What this car has is 4 different modes, which you might call the car's DNA, because literally that's what's written on the knob. Right next to the shifter is a knob that says Race DNA. Well, I should tell you everything you need to know about this car right there is what, as far as I'm concerned, where its mindset really is. I'll go ahead and explain what all that is. Now, if you have your selector set to A, that means advanced efficiency. Basically what that does, it makes the car more conscious of how much fuel it burns. That, believe it or not, that apparently is a concern for some people. Not me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not rich, but I kind of think if you can afford a car like this, you really most likely afford to put fuel in it. But that's my opinion. Some people worry about that kind of thing. Plus also you have environmental laws you got to deal with, so basically you might have to put some of these options in cars that they know no one's going to use, but you have to put them in anyway to appease the powers that be. You got to bear in mind, this is an Italian car sold in Europe as well as the United States. Either way, A, that means advanced efficiency. What that does, it gives you your engine start-stop. That's that annoying thing that I don't like every time you pull up to a stoplight and your engine cuts off and then restarts as soon as you take off. Now you have the ability to turn that off. You can leave it in advanced efficiency mode and not have the engine start-stop function. You can cut that off. But what it does, it softens up your throttle response. So, you know, some people, they like to get on the gas, off the gas. What that'll do is it'll soften that up to some degree. That way it isn't using up as much fuel while you're trying to just maintain the same speed down the highway and so forth. A lot of times drivers, while they're driving down the road, they're not the most cautious as far as what they're doing with the throttle. So if you can get the engine and not respond as fast as you are hitting the pedal, it'll burn a little bit less fuel that way. That's what advanced efficiency will get you. After that, you have natural mode, or mode N. Once you're in N mode, it's more like what you normally would feel in driving a regular car. It's just kind of your average, you know, go get your groceries kind of thing. You're not trying to be a race car driver trying to get to and from the supermarket. Well, you might if you're me, but not everybody. Once you put it in N or natural mode, it's more of just a regular drive. So if you just drive from here to there and you really don't, you're not trying to be anything fancy or special, just put it in N mode. It's just a nice normal drive. Throw her in N mode, I think you'd be the happiest there for just regular use. Now the next mode, D or dynamic, is more of a spirited driving mode. Say you're trying to basically have a little more fun. You're not necessarily taking grandma to the airport, but you're coming back and you want to just let it out a little bit. You know, you want to let the car run free, a little more wilder, have a little bit more fun with the car. Because, you know, if you, let's just be frank, if you brought grandma to the airport, you're tired of her. Unless you're my mother, then you're gonna give it a business in the car. Now dynamic mode, basically what it does is it firms up your suspension. It gives you more of a rougher ride, but it gives you more of control and handling in the car. The car will start handling a lot better, more stiffer. It stiffens up it'll actually stiffen up the steering wheel for you as well. It has more of a sport car feel at that point. Basically in dynamic mode, you're forgetting the fact you have a four-door car. Now you're starting to run with the bigger dogs. It's going to start feeling much more exotic, much more touchier, much more wanting to go, actually. Now, another thing it'll do is it'll make the brakes a little more touchier. Let's be honest, if you're spirited driving, you're going to have to get on them a little bit more. And you're going to want to have that better feeling of a harder brake. So it'll stiffen up your brake as well. Now, to be honest, one of my favorite features of this car also is it changes your exhaust mode once you're in dynamic mode. Now in dynamic mode, your exhaust is opened up a little bit more. Now you can hear your car. You can make your car talk for you at that point. That's what I like about more louder and boisterous exhaust, is you can actually make the car talk for you. You don't have to just sit there and be just going down the road here to there like everybody else, kind of boring. You know, you can actually make the car talk to other people using your exhaust. It gives it more of an attitude. If you're a true driver, you actually can make the car speak for you. So in dynamic mode, it'll open up your exhaust some and give you way more attitude. Now, if you're an absolute animal like myself, there's one more mode for you. Wait for this one, guys. The last mode is a little bit trickier to get to. It's simply a matter of turning the switch, holding it for a minute, and then you're on full-on race mode. Big old race, R-A-C-E, right on the knob. That mode basically is, you break it, you buy it. That's full send mode. That is, if you don't know what you're doing, you might be in a world of trouble. What race mode does, it completely opens up your exhaust as much as it can. Now the technical side under the hood, it allows for overboost. Basically, she's holding the wastegates closed for a little bit while longer, and now you're getting your full 505 horsepower, your full 443 foot-pounds of torque, and now this monster is absolutely ready to ride. Full send, we gotta go. It's gonna be your stiffest ride. It's gonna be full on ready for the track. In fact, Alfa Romero recommends on race mode for experienced drivers and on a track. However, with that being said, you know, you do have animals like me that might want to play a little bit. To be honest, if you're me, that's the mode where you're gonna want to use when you want to leave a set of rubber strips in front of your favorite shop. With that being said, race mode is where this car really opens up. In race mode, that's where this car absolutely can be itself. It doesn't have to worry about traction control, doesn't have to worry about all these things. It can be a drift missile if you want it to be. Again, not for the faint of heart, and certainly not for the inexperienced. If you don't know what you're doing, you might want to stay out of that. As far as I'm concerned, that's where I would shine. And for me, one day, when I do finally get one of my own, believe me, I'll show you. Now, to me, one of the most annoying things in cars today is that auto start stop. So I'm going to go ahead and address that again real quick. Alfa Romero claims that in D, N, and A, that auto start stop exists, but can be turned off independently. I'm imagining in race mode, it no longer is there. Now, of course, of talking all this power and performance, you do have to eventually stop a car. This isn't the 60s where we build 400 horsepower cars and have no brakes. Nowadays, they make cars that absolutely can stop on a dime and give you some change back. Now, this Giulia Quadrafoglio I'm sitting in right now has what they call the standard Quadrafoglio brakes on it. Now, basically, there are two different brake packages on this car. One are steel rotors, the other are carbon ceramic rotors. We'll go ahead and get into the details here. Now, the car I'm sitting in right now sports 14.2-inch brake rotors in the front and 13.8-inch brake rotors in the rear. The fronts are 11.26 inches thick and the rears are 1.1 inches thick. Both are vented, both are made out of steel. The car in the front uses Brembo 6-piston aluminum monoblock calipers, and in the back uses a set of Brembo 4-piston aluminum monoblock calipers. Those can be painted in a handful of different colors that you might want to spec. That's what's on this car. Now, there's an extra option if you were to order one of these cars or find one, but it's an option you're going to pay for. However, with that being said, I believe they'd be worth it, depending on how much you're going to track the car and how hard you're going to be on the brakes. Now, if you opt for the better braking package, what you're going to get is the optional Quadrafoglio Ultra High Performance Brembo Carbon Ceramics. Now, what those are in the front are 15.4-inch by 1.3-inch vented two-piece carbon ceramic rotors in the front with the same 6-piston Brembo monoblock aluminum front calipers, and the rears are sporting 14.2-inch by 1.1-inch two-piece vented carbon ceramic rotors, again with the same Brembo 4-piston aluminum monoblock calipers in the rear. Now, carbon ceramic will absorb the heat way better than steel will, and they're also larger, so you can only imagine how much more stopping power that'll give you. I do, however, notice that the thickness now remains the same, along with the same calipers on each car. Now, if you think about it, remember I was talking about that old Alfa Romero that my buddy's father had for a short while? You couldn't fit those big rotors in the wheels? Well, nowadays you can. 19-inch wheels are on this car, and they fit in there just nice. Now, here's something that I learned, sadly, pretty recently. Sometimes I think I came out of the dark ages as far as knowing things about cars. But honestly, up until recently, I didn't really know all that much about European race cars and their history and lineage. However, I'm learning very fast. You might wonder, this is a very odd name of a car. They call it the Giulia, and it's spelled a little different from what most people would think. However, being it's Italian, that's kind of expected. Now, Quadrafoglio. If we're going to talk old muscle cars, which is what I was most familiar with, Quadrafoglio would be what Chevrolet used to refer to like your SS badging, super sport. Now, Quadrafoglio, loosely translated, is four-leaf clover. Now, what does that mean and where did that come from? Well, I'm sorry, guys. I'm probably going to butcher the names, okay? My mother's Italian from Brooklyn, and I was born in New Jersey. I'm not from Italy, so I'm going to really ruin these names, but I'm going to try my best. Back in the day, Alfa Romero ran, well, they still do, ran race teams and so forth. And back in the day, they had four very famous drivers. The whole thing with the four-leaf clover came from a guy named Ugo Savacci. Again, terribly sorry if I wrecked the guy's name. He was getting very aggravated with a lot of second place finishes, so he hand painted a 4-leaf clover on his car. And lo and behold, with that 4-leaf clover on a car, he won. So at that point, the 4-leaf clover stuck. He kept it. Now, Alfa Romero had 4 drivers total. Ugo Savacci was one of them. Another guy you may have heard of, Enzo Ferrari. Yeah, he drove for Alfa Romero as a race car driver before you even heard of Ferrari as an automobile manufacturer. You also had Giuseppe Campari and Antonio Ascari. Again, hoping I got the names reasonably close. Now, those 4 guys, when they had the 4-leaf clover painted on the car, it was in a white square. Don't know if they designed it that way, but it was 4 on 4. Think about it. You had a 4-sided square with a 4-leaf clover in the middle. The 4-sided square was white. Unfortunately, Ugo Savacci died. Now, in his honor, they took that white square and they made it into a triangle to reflect the loss of the one driver. To this day, Alfa Romero cars, high-end cars, they're high-end badging. The Quadrafoglio badge is what they call it, and that's where it comes from. Even on your Stilvia, which is the Alfa Romero SUV, they have the Quadrafoglio package on there as well. On every Alfa Romero Quadrafoglio car there is, you will find a 4-leaf clover in a 3-sided triangle on the fender of the car. I got Nick with me. He's the salesman. He gave me permission to come in here and film this car, but I'm not crazy enough to try to start it by myself, so I'll get ahead and let Nick do that. Told you guys, it's not just your average 4-door car. Okay guys, there we go. That's the Alfa Romero Giulia Quadrafoglio. This dealership is part of the Bergstrom family, like I said. So behind me here, you got your Volvos. Here's your Alfa Romero and Maserati section. You got the 4C Spider right here, the Alfa Romero, and then right here is the Maseratis. Back this way, through that door is Porsche, and beyond that is Land Rover. Now that's what's here in this building. Another thing with Bergstrom is they like to talk about their upfront pricing. There's not really a bunch of haggling going on, like, you know, they put the price up high and you got to work them down low until they get a good deal, blah, 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 blah. They keep it straight up on the windshield right here. That's the sticker, that's the price, that's what the car is. MSRP on this car is obviously much higher. They want $69,145 for this car right here, as is equipped. Obviously, if it's a dealership, you could order one for you, but if you want the one that's sitting right here, $69,145. Not bad considering when you look at the windshield and when you look at the sticker here, MSRP. Now this being in 2019, but MSRP on this car was $79,695. Like I said, that would be a hell of a car. Hey Ma, it's a tight squeeze, but if he's small enough, he'll fit. Now if he's a big guy like me, we're gonna need a bigger car.